Hello and welcome to the Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading. Today we will be analyzing important news appearing in the Sunday edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 15th September 2019. The topics to be discussed today are reflected on your screen and the timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So let's begin. This news appears on page number 1 and it reads, Government unveils package to boost exports and revive housing sector. Now, yesterday, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a third set of government decisions to revive the economy, which are particularly aimed at boosting the exports as well as reviving the housing sector. Now, this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 3 under the category of Indian economy. Now, as far as boosting exports is concerned, the government has come out with two decisions under the category of incentives and taxation for support. The first of them is the scheme for remission of duties or taxes on export products. Now, this scheme is aimed at offsetting the amount which exporters pay as duty on exports. So, as you must be knowing, when the exporters are exporting a commodity, they have to pay a certain duty. Now, under this scheme, this amount or the duty which is paid by the exporters will be offset by the government. Furthermore, the government has projected that the revenue which will be foregone because of offsetting of the duty is almost up to 50,000 crore rupees. And this scheme will replace the earlier existing merchandise export from India scheme. The second decision is to have a fully automated electronic refund route for the input tax credit under the GST. Now there will be electronic refund module for quick and automated refund of the input tax credit to the exporters, and this will begin by September end. And it is expected that this automated electronic refund will monitor as well as speed up the ITC on the input tax credit refunds. Moving ahead, as far as financing exports is concerned, the government has decided to expand the scope of the Export Credit Insurance Scheme under the Export Credit Guarantee Corporation. So this basically means that the Export Credit Guarantee Corporation will now expand the scope of the Export Credit Insurance Scheme. So now all those banks who lend working capital to the exporters, they will be offered a higher insurance cover. Furthermore, even the premium or the installments which have to be paid by the MSMEs will be moderated in order to ensure that it is not too high or too low. It is expected that this initiative will cost almost Rs 1700 crore per annum on the government exchequer. However, expanding the scope of the Export Credit Insurance Scheme will enable reduction in the overall cost of export credit, which will include interest rates, especially which is levied on the MSME. Therefore, the main advantage is reduction in the overall cost of export credit. Fourthly, the priority sector lending norms for the export credit have been revised, and even the enabling guidelines are currently under consideration of the RBI. And it is expected once the priority sector lending norms for the export credit have been revised, it will release an additional amount of 36,000 crores to 68,000 crores as export credit under the priority sector. Fifthly, there will be effective monitoring of export financing by the Department of Commerce. Now already the data on export finance is regularly published by the RBI. And now this export finance will also be actively monitored by an interministerial working group in the Department of Commerce, who will now track export finance through a dashboard and will review this export finance with all the institution and stakeholder concerned, and if required, it will also carry out active intervention. Thirdly, we have certain set of decisions especially to facilitate exports in India. The first of them is to leverage technology in order to reduce the time to export or turnaround time. Now the government has decided that it will use the technology in hand so that whatever ongoing initiatives are there, they can be completed in time so that the time to export can be reduced. And this will be done through a seamless process of digitization of all export clearances, including the airports, seaports, customs, etc., as well as eliminating any kind of offline or manual services. Therefore, now onwards, all kind of clearances will be digitized and there will be no offline or manual services, and it is expected that this digitization will help to reduce the time to export for Indian commodities. Furthermore, the government will come out with an action plan to reduce the time to export in airports and seaports, and this action plan will be based on the international standards followed by other countries and will be implemented by December 2019. And lastly, to facilitate export, the government will also organize annual mega shopping festivals in India. Just like we have annual mega shopping festivals in Dubai, Milan, etc., India too will now have annual mega shopping festivals in 4 major cities in March 2020, and they will be organized in 4 broad themes. And these themes are namely gems and jewelleries, handicrafts, yoga, tourism, textiles and leather. Moving ahead, the government has made certain decisions with respect to exports under the free trade agreements. Now, firstly, the government has set up a special free trade agreement utilization mission, which will be headed by a senior officer in the Department of Commerce. Now, this mission will work exclusively with the Federation of Indian Export Organization as well as other export houses so that they can better utilize the concessional tariffs which are provided under each FTA. Moreover, the government will try and enhance the awareness amongst the MSME regarding the preferential duty benefits. Additionally, the government will also disseminate information regarding the compliance requirements under the FTAs to various importers and exporters in our country. Furthermore, specific goals will be set up under this special FTA utilization mission, and even an effective FTA monitoring system will be set up. In addition to this utilization mission, the government has decided to come out with an online origin management system for exporters, and this system will enable the exporters to obtain the certificate of origin much more quickly and without any kind of hassles. And this system is expected to be launched in the coming few weeks. It is expected that through this system, there will be a significant improve in ease of doing business for the exporters, because now they can get the certificate of origin much more quickly and easily. Moving ahead, specifically with respect to engineering, the government has taken 2 decisions. Firstly, the government has said that it will try and adopt the mandatory technical standards in a time-bound manner. Now, the government feels if India wants to improve the quality and performance ecosystem as well as enhance its competitiveness and address the issue of substandard imports, it is high time that India has to very quickly enforce all the necessary mandatory technical standards. And in line of this vision, a working group on standards will be set up under the Department of Commerce so that it can work closely with the import and export industry in order to lay down a roadmap for adoption of standards, timelines as well as enforcement. And this adoption of mandatory technical standards is expected to be a big boost in enabling Indian products overcome various kinds of non-tariff barriers in export. Next, the government wants to establish an affordable testing and certification infrastructure in India itself. And the government will expand and develop this infrastructure in PPP mode, that is public-private partnership mode, so that the exporters in India can get all the internationally accepted tests and certification done in India itself. And it is expected that this move will reduce the cost of adoption of standards and certification for Indian exports to meet the corresponding national standards of their FTA partners. And the last set of the government decision is to boost the export of handicrafts. Now, the government wants that the handicraft industry in India should be able to harness e-commerce for exports. Therefore, now the government will try and facilitate that handicraft artisans as well as handicraft cooperatives can directly go on to the e-commerce portal and sell their products, because this will enable a seamless export for even the handicraft industry. And in this regard, a mass enrollment of artisans across India will be carried out with help of Ministry of Textile and organizations like TriFed, CIE, etc. So these were the 12 decisions taken by the government in order to boost exports. Now let us talk about the decisions taken by the government in order to revive the housing sector. Now for the housing sector, firstly the government has relaxed the ECB guidelines for affordable housing. Now in order to facilitate and improve financing for the home buyers who are eligible under the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, the government in consultation with the RBI has decided to relax the ECB guidelines. And this relaxation is in addition to the existing norms for ECB for affordable housing. The next decision is with respect to the house building advance. Now the government has decided that the interest rate on house building advance shall be lowered. Furthermore, considering the fact that it is usually the government servants who contribute a major component of demand for housing, this move of lowering the interest rate will encourage more and more government servants to buy new houses. And the last and the major measure to revive the housing sector is the establishment of a special fund known as the Special Window for Affordable and Middle Income Housing. Now, this special fund will provide the last mile funding for all those housing projects which are firstly not a non-performing asset and are not undergoing National Company Law Tribunal proceedings, and they are net worth positive. So for all these housing projects in the affordable and middle income category, this special fund will be set up to provide the last mile funding to them. Now the main objective of the fund is to complete the construction of unfinished units. Now just like the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, the Government of India too will contribute to this fund, and the rest of the investment will be made by institutions like LIC as well as by raising private capital from banks, sovereign funds, etc. So here please remember that this fund will have contribution from both the Government of India as well as from other institutions. Now this fund will be professionally run with help of experts from housing and the banking sector, and it is decided that the Government of India will contribute almost 10,000 crore rupees to the fund, and a roughly similar amount will also be contributed from the other investors apart from Government of India. So these were the three main measures with respect to revive the housing sector. So having discussed these slew of decisions, let us now move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 14 and it reads, "Why is the Collegium of Judges in the spotlight again?" Now this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of GS Paper 2 under the category of Polity. Now the context of the news is that recently there was a controversy over the transfer of the Chief Justice of Madras High Court, Justice V.K. Tahilramani, to the Meghalaya High Court. Now this controversy has brought into question the efficacy of the collegium system of appointments as well as transfer. Now before we go on to understand the collegium system, let us first see what is the provision which is given under the Constitution as far as the appointment and removal of judges are concerned. Now it is Article 124 of the Indian Constitution which talks about appointment of judges. Now the gist of these provisions is that the judges both to the Supreme Court and to the High Courts of various states are appointed by the President of India as per the Indian Constitution. However, the method and manner of their selection has not been explicitly provided in the Constitution. Now, due to the absence of an explicit provision in the Constitution, the process for appointment, elevation and transfer of a judge to the higher judiciary has always been a debatable issue. Now, though the Government of India had passed the Constitution 121st Amendment Bill to establish the NJAC or the National Judicial Appointment Commission to replace the Collegium, however, a 5-judge bench of the Supreme Court declared the NJAC as unconstitutional because it believed that the NJAC was interfering in the independence of judiciary. Hence, the declaration of NJAC as unconstitutional has effectively revived the collegium system. Now let us talk about what exactly is a collegium. Now, collegium is a system where the Chief Justice of India and a forum of 4 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court recommend the appointment as well as the transfer of judges to the higher judiciary. By higher judiciary, we mean both the Supreme Court as well as the High Courts of the various states. Now, this collegium system in India has evolved through 3 different judgments of the Supreme Court, which is collectively known as the 3 judges case. Now, the first judges case, also known as S.P. Gupta versus the Union of India, in the year 1982, a PIL was filed in the Supreme Court regarding the appointment of judges of the High Court and the Supreme Court. And the moot question between the Supreme Court in this case was that as to whose opinion amongst the various participants should have primacy in the process of selection of judges. That is, whether it is the executive or the judiciary whose opinion has more primacy or importance. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court held that the opinions of the CJI as well as the Chief Justice of the respective High Courts were merely consultative in process, and the real power of appointment resided solely and exclusively with the central government, that is, with the executive. Further, this case also states that the executive or the central government could override the opinions which were given by the judges. That is to say, the opinions of the Chief Justice of India or the Chief Justices of the High Court was not binding on the government. Then following this, the second judge's case came in the year 1993. Again, in this case also a PIL was filed as a writ petition under the name the Supreme Court Advocate on Record Association versus the Union of India. Now, this petition was considered by a bench of 9 judges. And the main question in this judgment was regarding what is the primacy of the opinion of the CJI in regards to the appointment of the Supreme Court judges. Which simply means, what value does the opinion of CJI hold when we are talking about appointment of a Supreme Court judge? Now, the Supreme Court stated that under Article 124 Clause 2, the word consultative process which is mentioned, it means that the government does not enjoy primacy or absolute discretion in matters of appointment of a Supreme Court judge. So the court was of the opinion that the mere fact that this process has been referred as a consultative process, it clearly means that the executive or the government does not have absolute discretion. Moreover, the court observed that the provision that the Chief Justice has to be consulted with was introduced because the Chief Justice of India is the person who is best equipped or who has the best knowledge to know and assess the worth as well as the suitability of a candidate. Because obviously he is part of that institution and that organization. Moreover, the court also stated that it is very important in order to maintain the independence of the judiciary that political influence should be eliminated in the appointment process. Therefore, the second judge's case held that the election should be made on the basis of a participatory consultative process where the executive has the power to act as a mere check on the exercise of the powers by the CJI to achieve a constitutional purpose. Moving ahead, the last case, also known as the third judge's case. Now, this case was basically a presidential reference which was filed in 1990, and this case too was a 9-judge bench. Now, in this case, the Supreme Court, on a reference which was made by the President under Article 143, laid down the following proposition with respect to the appointment of the Supreme Court judges. Firstly, it stated that while making his or her recommendation, the CJI shall consult 4 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court. Secondly, the opinion of all the members of the Collegium with respect to the recommendation shall be in writing. Moreover, when a judge of the Supreme Court is being appointed, then the view of the senior-most Supreme Court judge who comes from the same High Court from where this candidate whose name has been recommended comes from must also be obtained in the writing for Collegium's consideration. If a name of a judge from, let's say, the High Court of X state has been recommended, then for his appointment, then the Collegium will also consult the senior-most judge of the Supreme Court who comes from this High Court. So it can happen that this senior-most Supreme Court judge is otherwise not one of the 4 senior-most judges of the Supreme Court, but for the fact that he is the senior-most Supreme Court judge who comes from the same High Court, then the Supreme Court judge has to be consulted. Next, if the majority of the Collegium is against the appointment of a particular person, then that person shall not be appointed. Furthermore, even if 2 judges have reservation against appointment of a particular judge, then CJI would not press for such an appointment. And lastly, stated that a High Court judge of an outstanding merit can be appointed as Supreme Court judge regardless of his standing in the seniority list based on an outstanding merit. Last, let us talk about the process of the Collegium. Now, as far as the appointment of the Chief Justice of India is concerned, the outgoing Chief Justice of India recommends his successor's name based strictly on the seniority of the appointment, which simply means that the senior-most judge of the Supreme Court becomes the Chief Justice of India. Now, after the CJI recommends his successor's name, then the Union Law Minister forwards this recommendation to the Prime Minister, who in turn then advises the President. Now, as far as appointment of other judges of the Supreme Court is concerned, now the proposal for their appointment is initiated by the CJI. The CJI, of course, consults the rest of the Collegium members, and as we discussed earlier, the senior-most judge of the court, hailing from the High Court to which the recommended person belongs. Now, the members of the Collegium have to record their opinions in writing, And finally, the Collegium sends this recommendation to the Law Minister, who again forwards it to the PM, and the PM then advises the President for their appointment. Next process is about appointing the Chief Justice of a High Court. Now, the Chief Justice of a High Court is appointed as per the policy of having a Chief Justice from outside one's respective state. And here also it is the Collegium which takes the call on elevation. Furthermore, as far as the appointment of other High Court judges are concerned, they too are recommended by a Collegium which comprises of the Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges. Now, this proposal is initiated by the Chief Justice of the respective High Court in consultation with the two senior most colleagues. And here too, the recommendation is sent to the Chief Minister, who then advises the Governor to send the proposal to the Union Law Minister. Moving ahead, it is not just the appointment which are being effected by the Collegium, but the Collegium are also responsible for the transfer. Now, it is the Article 222 of the Constitution which speaks about the transfer of a judge from one High Court to another. Now, when a Chief Justice of a High Court is transferred, a replacement must also be simultaneously found for that High Court concerned. Now, remember here that in matters of transfers, the opinion of the CJI is determinative. And secondly, the consent of the judge who is being transferred is not required. However, it is to be noted that the CJI has to take into account the views of the Chief Justice of the High Court concerned and the views of one or more Supreme Court judges who are in a position to do so. Furthermore, all the transfers must be made in public interest, that is, for the betterment of administration of justice. However, you should know that the Collegium system is highly criticized. Now, because of the fact that the process of appointment and transfer has not been provided in the Constitution, the Collegium system is opaque and it lacks transparency and is shrouded in complete secrecy as far as the reasons are concerned as to why one is appointed or transferred. Further, there is also criticism of nepotism, as many appointees hail from families of retired judges. So this was all about this topic. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 10 and it reads, Manmohan flays change in finance panel's term. Now, the former Prime Minister of India, Manmohan Singh, has said that the central government should have consulted the states before unilaterally adding terms of reference for the 15th Finance Commission. So, in this regard, we will be seeing what are the new terms of reference. But firstly, let us talk about the 15th Finance Commission. Now, the 15th Finance Commission was set up with the approval of President of India as per Article 280 Clause 1 of the Indian Constitution. So please remember that it is Article 280 which talks about Finance Commission. Now this 15th Finance Commission will be headed by Shri N.K. Singh and it will give recommendations for a period of 5 years commencing from 1st April 2020. Moreover, this commission shall use the population data of 2011 while making its recommendation. So this is also another point which you need to keep in mind. Next, let us see what are the terms of reference of the 15th Finance Commission. The first term of reference is firstly the efforts made by the state in expanding and deepening of the tax under the GST. Secondly, the efforts and progress made in moving towards replacement rate of population growth. Thirdly, achievements in implementation of the flagship schemes of the Government of India, disaster resilient infrastructure, sustainable development goals as well as the quality of expenditure. Fourth, the progress which is made in increasing capital expenditure, eliminating loss of power sector as well as improving the quality of such expenditure. Fifthly, the progress made by the state in increasing the tax as well as non-tax revenue, promoting saving by adopting the direct benefit transfers as well as the public finance management system. Moreover, the efforts made to promote digital economy as well as removing layers between the government and the beneficiary will also be taken into consideration. The next is the provision of grant in aids to the local bodies for basic services. Next is the control or lack of control in incurring expenditure on populist measures. And last is the progress made in sanitation, solid waste management as well as bringing in behavioral change to end opification. Now, the Finance Commission will consider proposing measurable performance-based incentives for the states based on all these areas and parameters. Now let us talk about the new terms of reference. Now, in order to enable the 15th Finance Commission to address the serious concerns regarding the allocation of adequate, secure, as well as non-lapsable funds for defence and internal security of India, the Union Cabinet has approved certain amendments in the terms of reference. Now, this amendment says that the 15th Finance Commission will also examine whether a separate mechanism for funding of defence and internal security ought to be set up, and if so, how such a mechanism can be operationalized. So, the new term of reference is to examine a separate mechanism for funding of defence and internal security. However, this decision has met with criticism, as the former Prime Minister of India has said that this decision has been taken unilaterally without consulting the states. Hence, it goes against the principle of cooperative federalism, and therefore this move is not good for the federal polity of India as envisaged under the Constitution. He moreover said that the central government should take initiative to consult the states as often as necessary so that the centre can carry the states along with them in the spirit of cooperative federalism rather than imposing centre's view on the states. So this was the new terms of reference and this was the criticism. So this was all about this news. With this, let's move to our next topic. This news appears on page number 9 and it reads, More whistling villages, MP stirs problem of plenty for Meghalaya. Now this news is with respect to a group of villages in Meghalaya where there is a practice of giving each child a unique tune instead of a name. Now this discussion of ours will become relevant from the perspective of prelims under the category of history and culture. Now almost a month ago, one of the MPs asked the government to ensure that the Kongthong village, which is located in Meghalaya, should be included in UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. Now this Kongthong village is located in Meghalaya and this village has a practice of giving each child a unique tune which is known as Jingruai Aibe in the local Khasi language. So this village, instead of giving a child a name, in their initial years, give each child a unique whistling tune. Now usually it is the mother of these children who compose such a tune for their children until they attain a certain age to be called by normal names. However, this request by the Member of Parliament has struck a wrong note with other villages because this practice is not just unique to the Kongthong village, but even other 22 villages nearby Kongthong have a similar practice. Name of some of these villages are Mosweet, Krang, Moimang, Warbha, etc. Hence, it is in this regard that the people of these other 22 villages are stating that it is unfair that only one village should get a recognition because such a culture and practice is even prevalent in other 22 villages. Now, all these 23 villages combined are part of the Khat Ar Shong area in the East Khasi Hills district. Khat Ar means an area belonging to 12 clans and a Shong means a village. Now here you should know that these villages are basically dominated by the Khasi community. And moreover, this Khat Ar Shong area comes under the Sora Hima, and this Sora Hima is a kingdom-like traditional administrative unit which is headed by a chieftain. Furthermore, Sora is the local name for Cherapunji. Additionally, you should know that whistling language is a kind of method of communication in which whistle is used to simulate and articulate a word. So basically, instead of word, this whistling languages uses whistles to connotate and simulate a word. Now earlier in the year 2017, UNESCO had also put Turkey's whistled language on the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage. Hence, in this regard, it is felt that even this whistling tradition which is prevalent in these villages in Meghalaya should also be safeguarded by putting them under the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage. So from the perspective of prelims, please remember the name of this village and that is located in the state of Meghalaya. And furthermore, remember their unique tradition of giving each child a unique tune or a whistle. And also remember which community is associated with this culture. Having discussed all of this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 15 and it reads, Climate change can reduce banana yield in India, study finds. Now this discussion of ours will become relevant more from the perspective of prelims under the category of environment. Now, the context of the news is that in the last 60 years or so, the global warming had helped to increase the banana yield in India at an annual rate of 0.024 tons per hectare. However, recently a study has said that this trend is about to change because with the continued global warming, the banana yield gains which happened since the 1960s are gonna slow down, and in fact some countries will see a drop in their yield of bananas. Now let us see what will be the probable impact of global warming on banana yields in India. Now you should know that India is world's largest producer as well as consumer of banana. In fact, India produces 29% of the world's banana yields. Now, as per the study, India, along with 9 other countries such as Brazil, will see a reduction in their yields. Now, in India, the states which are the leading producers of banana include Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Odisha, West Bengal, amongst various others. However, the study has said that decline in production of bananas in case of India can be mitigated if strong technology-driven measures are taken to yield the increase of bananas. Moreover, the study has claimed that it did not take into account the agroeconomic considerations such as cultivation infrastructure, access to market, extent of irrigation, etc. to arrive at a production data. Next, the study has stated that in various other countries like Ecuador or Honduras and many others in Africa, such countries will witness an overall increase in the crop yields of banana. And currently, the banana production in the world is concentrated in Africa, Asia, Caribbean and Latin America because of the suitable climatic conditions. Because banana is a tropical fruit, hence it can only grow in warm tropical areas. Now, certain other information has been provided for in the PDF. You can go through that. With this, let's move on to our next news. This news appears on page number 15 and it reads, Bacterial strain from IIT Bombay soil removes pesticide. Now, recently the scientists at IIT Bombay have identified and isolated a soil bacterial strain which helps in the complete remediation of carbaryl pesticide. Now, the carbaryl is a wide spectrum insecticide which controls over 100 species of insect and it is commonly used on citrus fruit, cotton, nuts, ornamentals, shade trees, other crops as well as even in poultry, livestock and pets. However, various studies have suggested that carbaryl is a carcinogen to humans. Further, carbaryl is also persistent in nature which leads to pollution of both the soil and the water ecosystems. Now, the researchers at IIT Bombay have isolated a bacterial strain which uses this carbaryl pesticide as its source of carbon and nitrogen in the growth process. Now, the team was able to identify the genes in this bacteria as well as the metabolic pathway which leads to complete metabolism and bioremediation process. Now, bioremediation refers to the use of either naturally occurring or deliberately introduced microorganisms to consume and break down environmental pollutants in order to clean a polluted site. Moreover, the team has published a paper wherein they have explained the process of movement of genetic materials between the organisms. Now, this movement between the bacterial strain and the carbaryl pesticide is known as the horizontal gene transfer and it is different from the vertical gene transfer. Now, usually the DNA can be passed between the cells in various ways and these ways are divided into two major categories, namely the horizontal and the vertical mode of transfer. Now, when a gene is transferred between individuals of unrelated generations, it is said to be a horizontal transfer. And when the gene is passed from parental organisms to its own progeny, it is then said to be known as a vertical transfer of genes. And in this process of bioremediation, horizontal gene transfer was there. Now, this bacterial strain which has been isolated, its species is yet to be identified. However, it comes under the genus of Pseudomonas. And in their study, the scientists found that this bacteria was able to grow on a medium which contained very high doses of carbaryl. So this was basically about this news. So with this, let's move on to our practice questions. Now, based on today's discussion, here is a prelims practice question. Please solve them by pausing the video and we'll discuss the answer after 5 seconds. The first question reads, consider the following statement. The first statement, Finance Commission is a constitutional body. This is correct and it has been provided for under Article 280 of the Indian Constitution. Second statement, 15th Finance Commission will use the data of 2011 census to make recommendations. This is also correct. Hence the right answer is C, both 1 and 2. Question number 2 reads, consider the following statement with respect to judges of the Supreme Court. First, the process and the manner of their appointment has been given under Article 124 of the Constitution. Now this is incorrect. The Constitution does not provide the manner or the process through which the judges of the Supreme Court will be appointed. Second statement, their manner of removal has been provided under the Judges Inquiry Act of 1968. Now this is a correct statement. Hence the right answer is B, 2 only. Question number 3 reads, which among the following are steps taken by the government to boost export? First, offset the duties paid on export. This is correct. Second, increase priority sector lending for export credit. This is also correct. Third, annual mega shopping festivals. This is also right. Hence the right answer is D, 1, 2 and 3. Question number 4 reads, recently Kongthong village was in news. Consider the following statement. Number 1, it is located in Manipur. This is incorrect. The Kongthong village is located in the state of Meghalaya. Second statement, it is known for its whistling language. Now this is correct. So the right answer becomes B, 2 only. With this, we come to an end for today's discussion. Let's move to the question for the day.